Julian Inspires asks, what would be a good power building split? I want to work on strength and size for bodybuilding. So I think power building is an interesting thing. I don't know who termed it, Mike O'Hearn. I think he was the one who termed it. But if you want to do a power building split, the essence of what power building is continuing having a focus on gaining strength. And this doesn't necessarily mean it has to be strength in a compound movement. You could focus on gaining strength in the leg press, or gaining strength in the fat dumbbell bench press, or any of these movements. But also having accessory work or bodybuilding work that concentrates on hypertrophy or muscle gain, so high volume work. I do both. I'm concentrating on gaining strength in my front squat, my close grip bench press, or my compound movements, and then I'm focusing on pushing a damn high amount of volume in my accessory work. So I mean, honestly, in terms of what's a good power building split, literally anything that fits your lifestyle, my man. It could be upper lower, or push-pull legs, but set up in a fashion that you have some main compound movements that you're progressing in terms of, the amount of volume that you can move and the amount of intensity, or the percentage of intensity you can move these lifts. And then some, bodybuilder movements, bicep curls, dumbbell bench press, flies, all that kind of good stuff. And you want to just focus on hypertrophy in those movements and progressing that in line. Honestly, there's so many splits you could set up in that sense. It just depends on honestly what works for you. I said honestly so much. Jorge the artist, my man, who drew this picture right here. I'm gonna find a way to get that on here. Jorge the artist asks, do I think bodybuilding is more of a sport or an art, or both? Both. It's a sport because, and a lot of people would say, oh, bodybuilding isn't a sport, but I think it's a sport even because you compete against other individuals to try and win, when you get to show. And it's, you're very active. And I think it's also an art because of the cheesy, people like to say this, it's kind of cheesy, but you can sculpt your physique to, first off, whatever your genetics allow, and the ideal you see it looking, it'll take time, but if it's possible within your genetics, you can sculpt a physique that pleases you, that's pleasing to your eye. So it's both, it's both. Justin McGarry Fitness asks, what is my strategy for YouTube videos? Do more series, more workout stuff, how-tos, or vlog? I just honestly, when I try to put out videos that are going to be helpful at times, and maybe sometimes that's a bit boring. I know sometimes, but I try to make sure that everything I put out is something that I've learned or something that has helped me or helped people I work with, because I want my videos to be a source that can, you can get tidbits from, and that'll help you further your experience in and out of the gym some way, somehow. So my strategy, I probably should have a strategy, but to be perfectly honest, I'm new at this YouTube game. I think I've been doing it for about 5 months now. So my strategy is honestly just trying to put out consistent content for you guys. That'll help you. And that's it. Something that'll help people. J.C.90835 asks, lower back pain when squatting. I originally started lifting and hypertrophy training in the past, then wanted to move to more strength training, particularly squats and deads. My lower back is torn up after every session. Either better warm up, exercises to build lower back strength, lower weight, patience. Appreciate the videos, man. Keep posting. I appreciate you, brother. Now, I haven't seen what your lifts look like, but just because I've seen a lot of people that have had these problems, your problem is probably with your mechanics. And there could also be a problem with lack of warming up. And there's probably also a problem with mobility in certain areas, because if you lack mobility, for example, in hip flexion when you're squatting, if you lack mobility in the hips, you won't be able to get to a full hip crease below knee, and that'll cause a lot of lower back pain. Also, for example, if you're beginning your squat with knee flexion, which is this thing, knee flexion, that that could potentially cause you problems with potential butt wink because you're not loading the hips first. So honestly, there's a lot of issues here, but my thing I would probably tell you to do is look up, mobility work for the hips and mobility work for the thoracic spine, and also work on your mechanics of your lifting. So lower the weight, work on mechanics, and make sure you're doing things right in that sense, because things as simple as bracing, creating torque, beginning your squat with hip flexion instead of knee flexion. These things can get rid of a lot of problems, but they're also things that people don't pay much attention to. So I would say for those lifts, for the more complex lifts, lower the weight and work on mechanics. And then if you still want to try and push high volume for your legs, do some leg pressing, do some leg extension for higher volume, just so you can get that amount of volume done while not injuring yourself as you work on mechanics of these more complex lifts. Oliver Rarth asks, when and how to overreach? Which form of periodization do I prefer? I think this was mentioned, or the form of periodization, in the prior question. I don't necessarily think I prefer any. You can utilize all forms. Some people don't really like daily undulating periodization. Some people like, pretty much having block periodization where they have purely strength blocks, purely hypertrophy blocks. I don't necessarily like that. I like doing both at the same time. It's just what I prefer and what I find more fun. Now, how to implement overreaching? If you've set up your current mesocycle in a way that it has the intensities of the certain lifts have increased over the weeks, and let's say you're on week 5 or week 6, depending on how well you've progressed, you could potentially, let's say I'm gonna get these numbers wrong, but let's say your 1 rep max is 405 for your squat. And if it's 405 and you're overreaching because you've gained that level of strength to this point, you will potentially program a 3x3 at 97%, which usually at the beginning of that training cycle wouldn't have been possible to move 3x3 at 97% of your 1 rep max. But because you've gained a decent amount of strength at this point, and even though you're relatively fatigued, you would have progressed so well that that would be movable in that week. Obviously, after this overreaching week, you would have a deload week, or potentially even 2 deload weeks, depending on how much fatigue you have. But overreaching weeks are meant if you don't necessarily feel super strong, but the weights are moving in a fashion that it's possible to move percentages that normally wouldn't have been possible at the beginning of the training cycle. Zach Marzo asks, what supplements do I take? I said I don't take much. This is probably asked by someone else too, so if you ask this, I'm answering it now. Supplements I take: creatine monohydrate, just because it's awesome, it's cheap, and it has been proven to work countless times. Fish oil, just for general health, cardiovascular health, heart health, all that kind of good stuff. Probiotics for gut health. Gut health is super important and it's overlooked, so take your probiotics, boys and girls, please. I take protein also, and I take protein mainly just so I can, in case there's a day that I've undereaten on protein from food, I'll have a protein shake, which is almost every single day, but it does nothing else. So don't think you have to take a protein shake just because other people do. It's only if, it's convenient. So protein for convenience. Do I take any other supplements? I rarely take BCAAs. I have some BCAAs that I took in the past, but BCAA cans take me like 3 months to get done. Glucosamine, I've lacked on my intake of glucosamine, but let's just say glucosamine is WD-40 for the joints. So if you do a lot of strength training or just high intensity compound lifts, glucosamine is gonna be awesome for you. So yes, glucosamine is great. I believe I also take something called valerian root sometimes when I'm having really, really bad sleep. So if you find that you can't fall asleep easily some nights, or you have anxiety or something and you need to get to bed, valerian root will be good for you. I think that's it. Yeah, that's all. Jericho Luxamana, I hope that's how I say it, asks, do I have tennis golfer's elbow? Is that why I wore the cuffs, or were they just preventative? I think that if I didn't do as much mobility work for my elbows, I probably would have tennis or golfer's elbow. I think I on the cusp, not so much on the cusp, like a bit away from the cusp, but getting close to it. But I do a lot of different mobility work for my elbows. I do a lot of, released ART, active release therapy for my forearms and triceps. And the way I do ART is I pretty much take a mobility ball, I flex, I smash it in, flex, contract, relax, get it deeper, contract, relax. And I do that on a lot of different parts of my forearms and my triceps and even my shoulders to keep those muscles loose and relaxed and limber so that they do not pull too much here and cause me a just ridiculous amount of pain. Also, the cuffs are only good because they keep the elbow warm during exercise. That's actually why I used to wear rebound knee sleeves, not because of the compression, but just because they kept the knees warm. And that also promotes blood flow and lubrication in the joint. David Howard asks, okay, so I have a couple of questions. Who am I training with in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And how is my BJJ progress? Keep it up, man. Glad to see you're back. I'm happy that you're happy to see that I'm back. Anyway, I'm training with Cassio Wernick. He is an awesome teacher out of Sacramento. He has a lot of crazy BJJ accolades that I really am not versed in, so whatever. But I am a white belt. I'm 7 weeks in. BJJ is going awesome. I have been getting some decent submissions against blue belts, so that is promising. But yeah, I really enjoy it. It took me a little while to get used to the fatigue from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, along with having to lift weights, so that's why I had to totally overhaul my program and set it up in a way that I'd still be able to progress in the gym and doing Jiu-Jitsu. But fatigue management is getting better as I'm not getting as fatigued and tired. My muscles aren't as sore after Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is awesome because I was scared that I wouldn't be able to do both and do both well, BJJ and lifting. But yeah, dude, progress is great. I'm loving it. I think I'm gonna get really, really good at it. I'm excited. C. Cardenas 2684 asks, have I always deadlifted double overhand? That requires quite a strong grip. Any benefits to that compared to mixed grip? So I deadlift hook grip. So there's double overhand, which is like this. Okay, so your thumbs would be over your fingers. There's hook grip, which would have you hooking. And then there's mixed, obviously, you know what mixed grip is. I used to deadlift double overhand. Then I switched to hook grip because when I started getting into heavier weights, the bar would get out of my hand and slide out. So I switched to hook, which takes quite a bit of time to get used to hook grip. So give yourself the time to get used to hook grip because it's painful. I can barely feel some parts of my thumbs now. That's not necessarily healthy, but it works for me. Now, yes, there is benefit in lifting hook grip versus mixed grip. Not like mixed grip isn't unsafe, but number one, all of the bicep tears that I have ever seen have happened with an individual pulling mixed grip, and it's always the hand that is supinated. Boom, that bicep just goes bye-bye. So I really never wanted that to happen. Number two, when you break the bar, when you're doing a sumo deadlift or a conventional deadlift and you go like this to utilize the lats, if you try imitating that motion with a supinated grip with this hand and you go like this, you notice that you won't be able to create as much torsion off of the bar with the supinated grip. But you know, honestly, if you get good at it, it's not necessarily a horrible thing to do because tons of the top deadlifters use the mixed grip, you know, and not everyone has big hands enough for hook grip. But if you do, I would suggest that you do hook grip. And also, I mean, another thing in mixed grip is that some people tend to have a weaker side in terms of their lats, and it usually is the hand that's supinated. So that's why I just like to have even grip. I like to do hook grip, and I think it's better than mixed grip in most cases for certain individuals. But doesn't mean mixed grip is bad. So do what works for you. Mush RC asks, will I be on Mark Bell's podcast also? Because I mentioned that I was going to train at Super Training soon. I don't think I'm at that level yet, bro. But in the future, hopefully I do some things that are big enough to be on that podcast. Basti S asks, won't I do calves, forearms, traps, abs movements at all? I will not do trap movements just because, honestly, deadlifting has given me some crazy traps. But if you're asking about a great trap movement to do, in my younger days I did a lot of farmer walks. Grabbed the heaviest dumbbells I could find, I walked back and across the gym for just multiple times. That was great, but I don't really want my traps to get any bigger. In terms of calves, I still do calf movements. I just do them sporadically, which probably isn't okay. My calves are big, but they could be bigger, but they're not necessarily a muscle group I'm really worried about at this point. But I still do them every week. I just don't have that listed in the video I made before about my current workout split. So I do them maybe once or twice a week. I'm sorry for all of you that don't necessarily have the biggest calves. It's a muscle that needs working though. Forearms, no. I do have some baby forearms though for my size. And then abs. I don't do many ab movements just because the abs are a stabilizer muscle group. This doesn't mean that ab movements aren't good to do. A lot of people do them. Ogus does a lot of ab work. Chris Elkins, Chris Jones, they all do ab work. That's not a bad thing, but in my point of view, like, if you can get lean enough, your abs are gonna show up either way. And abs are meant to stabilize, right? So when you're doing a movement like the squat, front squat, deadlifting, if you're doing anything where you need to brace, the abs are being worked if you're bracing. So I personally think I get enough work from having to brace my abs so much. Also because I always keep good posture, my abs are always braced to a certain degree. So I don't worry about doing too much ab work, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't or it's a bad idea. You know, some people, it's a great thing to do. I think it could potentially help you have thicker abs. And if that's something you want to have, definitely implement some ab work. Steve Kendrick, you savage Steve. What are a few sups that I take? I already answered that question. And then also, what's stopping me from putting out more content? Man, thanks for calling me out. I appreciate you for it. I actually do. What's stopping me from putting out more content? Me. I kind of slacked off towards the beginning of the year because when I started with BJJ, I wasn't getting into the gym as often and I was always feeling tired. And that honestly is just an excuse for being lazy at that point or getting lazy at that point. And I preach consistency, so I should have been more consistent in making videos. I do understand this. And that is what I'm trying to do, put out more content for you guys to help you guys. So yes, I don't think anything other than me is stopping me from putting out more content. But thank you for calling me out. I needed that. Ben Kalman asks, why Smith machine barbell rows? Just because they're much easier to control, they're much easier to load over time, and I don't need to concentrate on the, well, I do need to concentrate on the form, but they're not as technical as, let's say, the Pendlay row. I would ideally do seal rows over this movement. It's just the seal rows at my gym take a ridiculous amount of time to set up, and I don't really have that time to set up seal rows. David Webb asks, what have you found has worked for you as far as protein needs when cutting, as far as grams per pound of body weight? And do you reduce those along with other macros as you lose weight and get leaner? And what would you recommend, giving hindsight to the fact that everyone is different and it could be different based on individuals' own needs? Thanks in advance. So, protein needs when getting leaner. Obviously, as you get to deeper levels of body fat, you will hold on to less muscle just because it gets harder and harder to hold on to muscle when you get leaner. So a safety precaution would be upping your protein needs above what you would usually be doing when you were bulking. So for me, for example, my protein stayed at a peak of 250. All right, when I was on stage, I was around 240, 235. So my protein wasn't insanely high. Could have probably been a little bit higher. So some reasons why some people would also probably increase their protein would be just to keep themselves fuller as they get leaner. So an individual that is cutting, and let's say he's lean and he's 160 something pounds, may instead, if he's feeling super hungry, instead of increasing carbohydrates or fat, which could potentially, if increased, could lead to holding onto some body fat, increasing protein has a lesser chance of being held as body fat over time. So if you increase the protein from 180 to 200, even though that would be a ridiculous amount for an individual of this weight, that's 160, it could probably, actually most likely, that would help curb that person's hunger, along with helping him to continue to get leaner over time and increasing muscle protein synthesis, which is pretty much your body's way of holding on to or utilizing protein to keep and gain muscle mass over time. So those are the only reasons why you'd have excess protein usually when you're in a cut. In a bulk, I said that I was having my protein at 260. Right now my protein is usually around 240 again to 250. I'm not gonna take my protein that high. So yes, hope that answered your question. So guys, that concludes the Q&A. Thank you for all of your questions. I hope you got something from this video and learned some kind of tidbit that'll probably help you in your lifting career moving forward from here. Now, question for all of you. What I would like to know, I know that you guys want more mobility work, which is coming. I already have some footage set up, I just need to voice over it. But what type of other things would help you out in terms of progressing in the gym or learning to do things? What type of things do you enjoy seeing on YouTube? That's my first question for you. Second question is, from seeing my videos currently, because there's a lot of you guys that like what I put out, what do you not like? That'll take you a little bit of thinking. But yeah, let me know. This is Nsima the Centaur Inyang from BreakTheBar. I'm gonna add something to that question. What do you not like? And also, what do you like about my videos? Because I'm very curious. Let me know. Comment down below because you know I'm gonna respond. This is Nsima the Centaur Inyang once again from BreakTheBar, and I'll be talking to all of you very, very soon.